Hey everyone, my name is Alex, and today we're going to be taking a look at hosting for your Shopify app. It's a necessary step before you can actually launch your app and put it on the App Store, and there are a ton of different options for you to choose from. So today I'm going to be going over 3 different options that are really popular and really great, and one of them that I use myself personally, and a couple of them that are recommended by Shopify in their documentation. So the 3 providers that we're going to be going through today are Fly.io, Heroku, and DigitalOcean. And I'm going to be going through the Shopify documentation with you, step by step, show you exactly how to do it for each of these services. So the very first step, and we can just jump right in, the very first step is to create a new app, and I'm just going to create a new app using the CLI, and then we'll take that app. We won't customize it or make any code changes or anything, but we'll take that app and just go right into hosting so you can see exactly how it's done. So the first step when you are creating an app, you can do it through either the partner dashboard or directly through the terminal, and I prefer doing it through the terminal. So let's go ahead and copy this command, which is npm init at shopify/app at latest, and that will install a new Shopify app using the CLI. And let's go with just a random name, and we're going to be using the node template. So we'll wait for that to finish up. Okay, so that has finished up. Let me move this over here, and then I'm just going to go ahead and cd into the new directory just created, and then run npm run dev to do the initial setup of the app, and this will get it running locally for us. So we want to select yes, create it as a new app, same name, and then it's going to ask us which store we want to use to test out our project. Okay, and then once it finishes doing that dev startup, then it gives you an option to open it directly in your browser. Let's just open it up just to show you that this is a very default app. You see we're installing it on this store here. Okay, and here we see just the default app. Like I said, I haven't made any code changes or anything to it. You saw me just install it and open it up, and this is what it looks like. And this is served just locally off this ngrok link. So what we're going to do right now is take this app, and instead of serving it locally off of our machine, we're going to host it on these different services that'll serve the app for us, so that we don't have to do anything on our own machine or locally run it or anything, and it'll be accessible to everyone at that point. So the next thing I'm going to do, just to make the steps in the future a bit easier, I'm going to create a new repo for this and push it up to GitHub. So I'm going to go to GitHub and just create this new repository for it. All right, so I got the repo pushed up to GitHub, and so now we are ready to actually dive into the documentation and start deploying our app. The first service we're going to look at is Fly.io. And I should mention that Fly.io and Heroku are actually the ones that are mentioned in the Shopify docs, and they give instructions on how to host and deploy them. So they are probably the most popular options. We're going to start with Fly.io. And Fly.io is a free option. It has a free tier. So if you're just starting out, you want to push up an MVP and just kind of get something up to test it out, then this will be a great option for you. So we're on this page, deploy your web app, in the Shopify dev docs, and I'll put a link in the description to everything we go over today. But it's pretty straightforward. The first step is set up hosting, and the first thing you need to do is install flyctl and sign up for a Fly.io account. So let's head over to this documentation for Fly.io. We'll come here. So I'm on Mac, so I'm going to follow these instructions to install it using Homebrew. And if you are on a different operating system, Linux, Windows, they have instructions for you as well. All right, so now that we have installed flyctl, which is a command line utility for Fly.io, you can go ahead and sign up for Fly.io if you have not already. And they have pretty easy instructions here. If it's your first time, copy this and paste that into your terminal, and then it'll help you set up an account with email or GitHub. And then once you have that set up, And I already have that, so I'm just going to go to my dashboard. But once you have that set up, then we can go back to the documentation for deploying your app on shopify.dev. The next step after installing this command line utility, navigate to your directory. We're already there. So now we need to run this flyctl launch command. So we'll come over here, run that in the terminal. And then we'll just kind of do the default options here. We don't want to set up any databases right now, and we don't want to deploy yet. So we'll say no for that. Okay. And then, like I said, it does have instructions for Heroku as well, but we're going to come back to that. So now we're just going to move to step 2, which is retrieving the environment variables. So you can just go ahead and copy this and then paste that into your terminal. You can also get these from your partner dashboard under the app setup. You can see all the API keys and API secrets. Okay, so here are the environment variables for my app. You should never expose these keys or secrets. They're obviously here in the video, but the app's going to be deleted before this video goes up. So now we're going to go to step 3, which is setting the environment variables. So we're going to just basically use those values that we just spit out in the terminal. For fly.io, there is a fly.toml file that we need to update in our project. And I'm going to do that in VS Code. So I have a shortcut to open up VS Code. And this just opens up our code for the app. So I'm going to come in here, find this fly.toml file. And then you can see there's this section here that says env for environment variables. And in the documentation, it shows you what it should look like. And these are the values that we need to add. So I'm just going to copy this over, put that right there, and then switch it out for our values. So here we need to switch out the API key. So we'll do that here. And then scopes is going to be the same, right products. The port we're going to leave at 8081. And then for the host, you can actually go to your dashboard for fly.io. And it should be up here. So this is another app that I have, and then this is the one that we just barely set up by using the flyctl launch command. It started setting that up for us. So you can find the host name here. It's not deployed yet. There's nothing on this, but it at least has the host name, so we can go ahead and copy that. And then put that in our host value here in the fly.toml file. Okay, so we'll go ahead and save that. And then let's go back to the Shopify deploy documentation to see what's next. And we need to set the environment secrets. So we're going to copy this command, head back over to the terminal, and then copy the secret and replace this placeholder here with our Shopify API secret. Cool. Okay, so now we can move on to the next step, which is actually deploying the app. So if we come down here to step 4, it gives us a command that we just throw right into our terminal to actually deploy the application. And you can see that one of the arguments here is the Shopify API key. So again, we can just copy that from right here where it gave it us before. And we'll just replace that. And we'll let it run and deploy and do its thing. All right, so that has finished. Looks like it was successful. So let's go back to our Fly dashboard now, and we'll just refresh this page. And this is our app. It should be hosted. So if we click on this link, okay, this is exactly what you want to see. When you open up an embedded app in Shopify without it being actually in the Shopify admin, then it'll just give you this message, no shop provided. So this is a good sign. This is exactly what we want to see here. So if we go back to our store with the app, this is what it was running on before. It was running on ngrok. We stopped that server, so when I refresh, it should just give us an error. Okay, so yeah, again, that's expected. It can't find the ngrok URL because we have stopped the server. So now if you go into your partner's dashboard, the next step is to go into your app and switch out the app URLs to our new hosted URLs. So we'll come in here in this URL section let's come back and copy this new host URL, and we'll replace these existing ones. The only redirection URL you need by default is the /API/auth/callback, so we'll leave that in there. Okay, so now when we save that, and then we can come back, refresh our app page, and we should see what we saw before, the starter app, but this time it will be hosted from the fly.io. Okay, so there we go, we see it. And then just to make sure that we are seeing the right thing, if we come into the network tab, and then let's look at this fetch call. Yeah, so we can see it is hitting that new URL we put in, so it is hitting our fly.io hosted application. So that's for fly.io. It's all hosted. It was completely free to get it set up and started. This would be the same process for any application that you have. Obviously, this is a starter one. There's no code changes. Yours will be very different to this, but the hosting process will be practically exactly the same. You'll probably have some extra environment variables and whatnot to add in there, but for the most part, you can just follow this documentation exactly and do all the commands and everything, and you'll have a hosted app within just a few minutes. It took us 5 to 10 minutes to get that all set up. All right, so now that we have gone through the fly.io setup, which is, again, they have a free tier, so it's a completely free way to get your app hosted and set up. Let's move on to Heroku now, which again is also documented here in the hosting and deploy documentation on Shopify. So it'll be a very similar process. We'll go through, set up the hosting, add the environment variables, and deploy it. And it'll be pretty quick as well. So let's just jump right into it. We have the step 1, set up hosting. So we'll scroll down to where it says set up hosting with Heroku this time. And we will just go through these steps. So the first thing you need to do is make sure that you have the Heroku CLI and Docker installed. So the Heroku CLI you can install here for Windows, Mac OS, whatever operating system you have. Just follow those instructions. I do have it installed already, so I'm going to skip that step. And then, for Docker, you just want to select the Docker desktop version. And then you'll want to have that running before we get started with the rest of the steps. So you can see I have it running here, Docker desktop. All right, so let's close out of that. So once you make sure that you have those two installed, then you can follow along with the rest of the steps. Let's go to step 3. We're already in our app directory, so now we need to log into the Heroku CLI. So we'll go back to our terminal. Let's clear this out. And then we'll just paste in this Heroku login command. Okay, and it'll take us to the browser to log in. If you don't have a Heroku account, then you'll need to get that set up as well. Okay, so I'm already logged in, so it was a very quick process. Let's go back to the documentation. Okay, now we need to log into the container registry. And for the most part, again, you can just copy these commands and paste them into your terminal. This one, you want to make sure that your Docker desktop is running before typing this in. Okay, so that login succeeded. And then now we're just going to create the app in Heroku, paste this in, and then just swap out my app name for our app. Okay, and then we'll let that run. Okay, and it created it for us. Okay, so now we're going to go down to step 2, which is retrieving the environment variables. This is the same step that we did before. Let's put in the terminal here, though, just so the values, we have them right here. It'll give us the API key, secret, and the scopes. Okay, so let's continue down to step 3. Come down to the Heroku section. All right. So now we need to go into our code base real quick and add in a heroku.yml file or YAML file. So let's pull this up, and then we're just going to add a new file here. Okay. And then we'll copy this over and paste that into our new file. We're going to replace this placeholder here with our actual Shopify API key. Save that. And then we'll come back, and all we're doing here is just basically making a commit since we've added that new file. So I'm just going to commit it through the VS Code interface. And then push that up. Okay. So the next step is setting the environment variables. And the documentation shows you how to do it through the terminal. You can also do it through your dashboard, through the Heroku dashboard, which is where I'm going to do it just because it's a bit easier to work with. So I'm going to come in here to my account. I'm going to open up, this is our new app that we just created. And then you'll go to settings. And then in here it's called config vars. So you're going to reveal config vars, and then you can go ahead and add in all of those that you need, which are host, scopes, API key, and API secret. So first we'll add in the host. And the host is actually going to be this. If you scroll down a little bit, it gives you the domain for your app right here. So this is actually what we're just going to copy over and put that directly in there for the host. We'll add that. Okay, the next key we need is scopes. So we'll come in here, and then that's just going to be write products. We'll add in the Shopify API key, and that one, let's grab that from our terminal. And then the Shopify API secret is going to be the last one that we need in here. And again, we can just grab that from the terminal. Okay, so those are added. Like it says here, it already adds the port variable and sets that up, so we don't need to add that. And the next step is just deploying the app. So we'll come down to Heroku, and we just need to do this command, git push Heroku main. So we'll copy that over, come over in the terminal, paste that there, and then we're just going to wait a few minutes for this to run. All right, so that has finished now. So now we can go back to our Heroku dashboard right here. We'll come back to the main page of our app, and we can see that it deployed successfully. It gives you all the activity here. So we can see the build succeeded and it deployed. So let's go back to settings just so we can get this URL. We'll click on that. And again, this is exactly what we want to see, the no shop provided, since we're not opening it in the admin through the embedded app. So now that we have that set up, our app is hosted on Heroku now, and it's hosted at this link right here. So we're going to do the same thing that we did with the fly.io hosted app, and we're just going to copy this address, this URL, and we're going to swap those out in the app URLs in the Shopify Partners dashboard. So yeah, we're going to remove the fly.io ones and then just add in the Heroku ones. And it should work exactly the same. It's the same exact app, just hosted in two different spots. So it should look exactly the same for us. So we'll save that. We'll come over to our application running on our test store and then clear this out so we can view the network. And then we can verify that it is actually coming from Heroku. So let's refresh the page. Perfect. All right. So we see the exact same thing. And then we can just double check that it is coming from Heroku. And there it is. You can see our new Heroku URL being used there. So again, it's the same app, just hosted on two different spots right now. And all we needed to do was, a few minutes of setup and then switch out the app URLs. So you can see how quick it is to really just get started from having your app only locally to getting it hosted and taking the next step towards releasing your app. It just takes a few minutes, and all we did was follow the Shopify documentation. And now we have our app hosted on these two different services, fly.io and Heroku, which again are recommended by Shopify here as examples in their documentation. So I did mention the fly.io has a free tier, so it's free just to get up and running. Heroku, unfortunately, is not free. They used to have a free tier, but it's not free anymore. And that one will be $7 a month on the minimum plan. So that's what you'll be looking at, which is still, a really great price for hosting your application. Considering you could probably get pretty far with just $7 a month. You could easily make that back if you're charging for your app. You can get quite a few merchants on your application without needing to upgrade for a good while. So the last hosting provider we're going to be looking at is DigitalOcean. They are another really popular option, and I actually use them for a lot of my apps, both inside and out of the Shopify ecosystem. Let's dive into the DigitalOcean setup now. And this one is not documented within Shopify, so we're just going to go through this one together. And let's go ahead and go to DigitalOcean.com. If you don't have an account, just sign up for an account. Okay, once you're signed in, you'll see a dashboard that looks like this. And then you're going to want to come up here to create, and then you'll click on the apps section. All right, so for DigitalOcean, you do need to have a repo hosted somewhere. GitHub is probably what most people will be using, and that's what I use. So that's where we're going to be pulling the source code from, but it does need to be hosted somewhere. If this is your first time on DigitalOcean, you'll probably need to hook up your GitHub to the application so that you can give it permissions to access your repo. And that will look something like this. If you go through the setup for the first time, it'll take you to your GitHub, and you'll be able to select which repos you want it to access. And then once you set up your permissions, it'll take you back to DigitalOcean, and you'll be able to select the repository that you want to access from this drop down here. Okay, so once you have that set up, you can go ahead and click Next. This auto deploy is a great feature that I would just keep checked, just so that every time you push to your main branch, then your application is going to just redeploy automatically. All right, so on this Resources tab, there are a couple ways to do it. Typically, if I'm just starting out an app and just want to get it up bare minimum, you'll see that there's two items here. Just remove the last one. You want to keep the one that says Docker file here. And then you can go ahead and click Edit Edit Plan here. And then if you go to Basic, and then you can click this drop down and go to the lowest option, which is $5 a month. So that's going to be the minimum that you'll be paying on DigitalOcean. And again, $5 a month, even $5 a month will get you pretty far as hosting your app and even getting your app up and running, merchants on it. I've hosted apps on this $5 a month plan that are still on there. So this will be fine, especially for testing and MVP stage. It's totally fine to just stay on the base plan. All right, so now we're going to go to the next step, which is environment variables. So this is going to be similar to the other steps where we added in our environment variables. They have this bulk editor option where you can just paste it in. So let's come back and find where these were given to us, and we'll just go ahead and paste that in here. And then we'll want to add the host as well. And for the host, since it hasn't given us a host URL you can use yet, you can just use any URL. I'm just going to use Google here. And then we'll want to change it out basically as soon as this is deployed for the first time. It'll give us a URL. And so we'll just go through and replace that host environment variable. Okay, so we'll save that. Click Next. Everything looks good. Next. And then we'll go ahead and create the resources. So click that. And then now our app is building. So we'll wait for that to build, and you can go check out the build logs if you want. They have a neat interface. You can see all the logs coming out. But overall, it's a pretty smooth process. You just hook it up to your GitHub repo. And then since the Shopify apps all have a Docker file, it'll kind of take care of that and just take only the environment variables and get it set up from there. All right, so that has finished building and deploying. And so we can actually come up here and just check out the app. Again, this is exactly what you want to see, what we saw in all the other ones. The no shop provided, and it now has our host link here. So let's go ahead and copy that. And then we'll go into the environment variables, which is under settings here. Edit that, and then we'll just change out the host to be our new app URL. So we'll save that. And then it's going to go ahead and push another deployment. And so now we can go to our Shopify partners and again, just switch out the app URLs for our new app URLs, just like that. We'll save. And then we'll wait a minute for this to finish before actually testing it on the app. All right, so that has finished building again. So we can come over here and let's just refresh our app on our test store and make sure that everything's working as expected. Great. Okay, there we go. So our app, again, this is exactly what we want to see. It's the same app hosted, this time on DigitalOcean, and we can verify that coming over here in the network. Yep, and we can see it's coming from our DigitalOcean hosted app now. So that was a quick overview of hosting your Shopify app, how to do it. We went through step by step for Fly.io, Heroku, and DigitalOcean. And then just a reminder, Fly.io is free. They have a free tier. Heroku starts at $7 a month and DigitalOcean starts at $5 a month. They're all really great options, so you can test them all out, see which one works best for you. Or there are a ton of other options, like I mentioned, apart from just these ones that you can choose from as well. If this video was helpful for you at all, please leave me a comment, let me know, leave a like. And if you want to see more videos like this in the future, then go ahead and subscribe to my channel. And you can let me know in the comments if you have any other questions related to hosting or anything else. There will be links in the description to these 3 hosting providers that we went over. A lot of times they do promos where you can sign up and you get a certain amount of credits for free. So definitely be on the lookout for those. And for DigitalOcean, I will give a link that will give you a $200 sign up credit for 60 days. And then I also get a small credit kickback from that as well. Thank you so much for watching, and if you have any questions or anything, you can leave a comment, you can shoot me an email, or you can find me on Twitter as well.